Back in early 2021, I released a video talking about my favorite roller coasters by Bolliger and Mabillard, which they also go by B&M for short. Well, that video is sorely outdated, like hilariously outdated. Glancing down my original picks to now, this is going to be a brand new list. Over these past 3 years, I've been on many more models by B&M, and my opinion of this manufacturer only continues to soar. Their hypercoaster model is easily one of my favorite coaster models of all time. They are fun, smooth, and loaded with airtime. Well, this list doesn't stop there. B&M has a rich selection of coaster designs, all with their own collection of masterpieces. Before we get to my updated list of favorite B&M roller coasters, please do me a favor by clicking on that like button, and if you are new to my channel, love roller coasters, be sure to subscribe. So previously I only included my top 10, but since there are so many that I really like, I'm going to increase this to my top 15. Number 15, Afterburn, located at Carowinds. I got my first ride on this coaster back in the summer of 2021. It only took one ride to realize that Afterburn is one of the best inverted coasters out there. It has strong G-forces, aggressive inversions, and snappy elements. That final corkscrew really flips you through that maneuver, also feeling a little too fast. Also, for its age, this ride is still butter smooth. I have zero complaints in that department. Number 14, Great Bear, located at Hershey Park. In my original ranking, Great Bear was at 5th place. Well, I've been in a lot more B&M since then, so I feel this field is a little bit more competitive. What can I say about Great Bear that I haven't said 1,000 times? It's a fun, unique roller coaster that has one of the best layouts for an inverted roller coaster. I love the fake-out drop into a helix prior to taking on the large first drop. The inversions are forceful, and I really love the zero-G roll and corkscrew. Both elements are fast and snappy. My last ride was back in October during a rainstorm. I was the only one on the train and I got completely soaking wet. I never laughed so hard on a roller coaster than that last ride on Great Bear. Number 13, Montu, located at Busch Gardens, Tampa. If you listen to our bonus episode of ERT, which you can find over at Podbean, you will know that Kara and I have opposing opinions when it comes to Montu. She thinks it's an overrated invert that has a nasty rattle. Well, I have a complete opposite take. I thought it was butter smooth, forceful, and I love how it incorporates the terrain into the ride. This is my favorite inverted roller coaster. I think it has excellent theming, great inversions, and even though it has that quick pause with a mid-course brake run, the ride still has impeccable pacing. Number 12, SheiKra, located at Busch Gardens, Tampa. Looks like we're not going to be traveling too far to talk about the next roller coaster on my list. Yes, I put a dive coaster above my favorite inverted roller coaster. Sure, these rides are about that one drop, but SheiKra has more to offer. The drop is great, of course, but then you have that second drop into the tunnel, and I always love that cool splashdown effect. Because I lean more towards rides with airtime is why SheiKra is making it a touch higher than Montu, but note, every roller coaster on this list is a great attraction. Number 11, Nitro, located at Six Flags Great Adventure. Last time around it made it to 8th place. The hypercoaster market has only gotten more fierce since my previous video, and Nitro has a couple flaws holding it back. The first thing I noticed during my 2022 ride, the coaster was starting to develop a rattle. Depending on where you were seated, I might even say it was uncomfortable. Thankfully, the ride still has some great airtime moments, especially later in the day when the coaster is warmed up. Nitro still has one of the most intense moments with that upward helix prior to the mid-course brake run. Number 10, Apollo's Chariot, located at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. Apollo is going to drop from 4th place down to 10th. By and large, Apollo's Chariot is still a great hypercoaster. It's definitely not the best, but what you get is solid floater airtime, a relatively smooth ride experience, and excellent interaction with the surrounding scenery. The coaster is starting to develop a rattle, but it's really only during the helix turnaround. Apollo's Chariot has the classic 9-row trains, so getting a ride in that very back row will produce some excellent airtime during that first drop. Number 9, Candemonium, located at Hershey Park. I've been on this roller coaster every year since it opened in 2020. For the most part, it continues to hold up with an excellent first drop, fantastic camelback hill, and you can't forget about that banked airtime hill prior to the Hershey fountain. Last time around, I had this coaster ranked at 3rd place, but it was clear after one ride on Mako, Candemonium was no longer the best hyper coaster. I still think it's better than most give it credit for. Sure, the 2 trims can easily hamper the ride experience, especially that second trim prior to the fountain, but nonetheless, this is a solid roller coaster with fun airtime that you could marathon all day long. Number 8, Intimidator, located at Carowinds. Speaking of underrated roller coasters, let me introduce you to Intimidator, or maybe it's Intimidator. Yes, this coaster is known for its trim brakes as well, though I don't think they really impact the coaster experience that much. Similar to Diamondback, rides in the very back rows or up front will produce the best moments of airtime. Sitting in the middle is where those pesky trim brakes will affect your ride. The best seat on this ride is clearly in the back row. Be prepared for some long, sustained moments of airtime. Number 7, Pipeline the Surf Coaster, located at SeaWorld Orlando. Time to break up the sea of hypercoasters and talk about B&M's newest model, the Surf Coaster. This ride is a modern take on the stand-up coaster. The seats have a little give to them, allowing you to bob up and down with the forces of the ride. With new restraints and more open seating design, riders can actually kick their legs out during the airtime moments. The vest restraints could be worked around a little more to be more comfortable, but this is a huge night and day improvement over the original stand-up coaster. With Pipeline being the first of the surf coaster model, I can't wait to see what other great creations B&M is able to do with this coaster type. Number 6, Goliath, located at Six Flags Over Georgia. The hypercoaster that, depending on who you ask, isn't actually a hypercoaster. The ride stands 200 feet, but its max drop is only 175 feet. Regardless, though, if you want to argue over being a hyper or not, Goliath is a solid roller coaster that boasts some of the strongest airtime moments on any hypercoaster model by B&M. That series of bunny hills working your way back to the station can send you flying out of your seat. The only negative that holds this coaster back from being near the top of my list is the rattle. This coaster is rough, with portions of the ride crossing into that uncomfortable category. I found more to love than dislike, but Kara was not a fan and thought that this was one of the roughest coasters by B&M. Number 5, Diamondback, located at Kings Island. It was my original number 1 coaster by B&M, now it'll have to settle for being in the top 5. This is a coaster that has some excellent sustained airtime, possibly the best out of the whole bunch. However, the problem with Diamondback is very similar to Intimidator. If you aren't seated in the very back row, you can get a pretty mid experience. Also, at the bottom of the first few airtime hills, the train can get a nasty rattle. Thankfully, it only lasts for a few seconds, but it will hold this coaster back from being ranked higher. As a bonus, Diamondback features a splashdown effect at the end of the ride. If you are seated in the back row, look back and check out those giant rooster tails of water blasting into the sky. Number 4, Manta, located at SeaWorld Orlando. Completely omitted from my last ranking, Manta is one of my favorite B&M coasters of all time. I'm starting to appreciate the flying coaster model with each ride I take. Most of the ride is pretty graceful, but then you have that insane pretzel loop bringing on the G-forces. I love every element, and that finale as you swoop down over the water and right by that waterfall is the icing on the cake. Number 3, Orion, located at Kings Island. Only moving by 1 point, Orion switches from 2nd to 3rd. Overall, this is still one of my favorite B&Ms, even if it's not that record-breaking attraction we were hoping for. The first drop is excellent, especially if you're riding in the back row. The wave turn has continued to grow on me and offers some nice laterals as you're banked to the side, steering almost 200 feet down to the ground. The Speed Hill and Giant Camelback Hill are 2 great moments of airtime, and we can't forget about that banked airtime hill prior to the brake run. From drop to brake, Orion is a powerhouse of a ride that, even if it doesn't utilize the speed like Fury 325, the pacing is still top notch. Number 2, Mako, located at SeaWorld Orlando. After riding Candemonium in 2020, I only assumed that it would be about on par with Mako. Well, I got my first ride on Mako in 2021 and instantly knew which coaster was superior. Mako is a true airtime machine, creating some of the greatest moments of sustained airtime you can experience. The ending of the ride after the mid-course brake run might be a little mid, but everything up to that point is solid elements with tons of airtime. Also, what makes Mako so great, sure the back rows and front rows will be the best, but even if you are stuck in the middle row, Mako still delivers. That's something that you can't say about Diamondback or Intimidator. Before we get to my number 1 coaster by B&M, here are a few honorable mentions. Number 1, Fury 325, located at Carowinds. If you know me, then my number 1 was no secret. I snagged my first ride in 2021 and instantly went head over heels for Fury. This is the pinnacle of B&M by far. It basically takes every great element and made it better. The high speeds, airtime moments, and of course the famous treble clef maneuver that creates some decent vertical airtime. I know that some will complain about the final part of the ride, saying it loses momentum, but I would disagree. Sure, that helix is a little lackluster, but those final airtime hills working your way back to the brake run are top notch. Carowinds does an excellent job with their operations, so you can keep hopping right back in line after getting off, which is exactly what you want to do after getting your first ride on Fury 325. Well, that concludes my list of favorite B&M roller coasters. Until next time, this is X-Scream Thrills.